careful, please. That elite was an ultra.
A personal pet peeve of mine that seems to come up whenever I'm dealing with members of my faith, and there's a bit of a moral conundrum that comes up. In the event that I take a strong stance against it and say, this is wrong, inevitably someone is going to come up to me and say, I know what you're saying, I get it, but people are free to do what they want. Whatever people want to do, that's okay. That seems to be the mentality. And my response is always the same, that we have a responsibility to stop evil, to encourage righteousness, force righteousness if we can. Force your kids to be righteous, right? And inevitably people say, well, isn't that Satan's plan? What are you talking about? There was no Satan's plan. Satan's plan was just the lie. And that's kind of the interaction that has sparked my desire to correct this, because for some reason, we've totally misunderstood what liberty and what freedom is as members of the church, and we should be immune to this. For example, take some Nephite, right? He's a loser, he's a lowlife, right? He lives in the city of Ammonihah, and he's like a drug addict or whatever, and he's doing all these abominations, whoredoms. Take that guy. Now imagine the very same guy, except he lives under the rule of Mosiah in the city of Zarahemla. And because of that, he's not allowed to do all of these horrible things. And he lives a much more fulfilling life, a good life. He's a good father, and he's not a drug addict because he's not allowed to become one. Who's more free? As members of the church, we should really understand this a lot better than we do. We just seem to be confused. There's this lie about liberty that's possessed us, and it's taken over our minds. It's changed the way we interpret the world and the gospel. It seems to prevent us from being able to stand up for ourselves and to stand up for righteousness, right? It may seem innocuous or even virtuous to say, I'm a libertarian, people can do whatever they want. But it's really, at the end of the day, it's just moral cowardice. Are you a Mormon? Are you a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? Or are you a libertarian? That's really what it comes down to. Libertarianism is not the restored gospel, guys. It seems to have a tighter hold on the conservative members to a far greater extent than the rainbow communism has taken over the left wing. And really, they're the same thing. They're the same ideological coin, right? They both misunderstand what true freedom and true liberty is, and these two ideologies, they work together, and they have this ratcheting, tightening effect. They really just distort the world's morality slowly, and they slowly corrupt all of our institutions. And the people who run the church and the members of the church, we're just not immune from this. We're all subject to this problem, right? But we should know better. We have the keys to understanding reality. We have the keys to pierce the mists of darkness. So often we just misunderstand the most basic of things because of this false gospel of liberty. Take the war in heaven. You know the war in heaven? You know how it goes. Lucifer says, hey God, I will save them all. Give me thine honor, right? And how do we understand that? We say, oh, well, Satan's plan was to force everyone to be righteous. He was gonna get out the chains and the whips and say, y'all better go to church. Y'all better skippity-doo off to church. And this is ridiculous. This has nothing to do with what the scriptures say. And the Book of Mormon is totally counter to this idea that Satan was an authoritarian or something. Satan has never behaved like this. He's always been this sneaky, slithering person. He always is just begging people to worship him. He just loves to be seen as the most virtuous person ever. And that's how Satan is. He just says, oh, guess what? I'm better than Jesus. I'll save everyone. I'm more merciful. I'm more loving. I'll save people. It doesn't matter if they're obedient or not. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter what kind of a person it is. Let's save them. And that's really what he was saying. He was saying, look, God, he's got many mansions in heaven, And let's just have one great and spacious mansion for everyone. That would be more fair. That's exactly the kind of message we see in the world everywhere today. It's this idea, it's kind of this flattening of the hierarchy, Let's just flatten it all. That's why the prophets have relentlessly just harped on this whole communism thing, is because it's about destroying hierarchy. It's about give me thine honor to the bourgeois or whatever, the rulers, and then you take it and you give it to the proletariat, these subjects, right? That's what Satan said. He said that. How are we not seeing this? I just don't get it. We get it all backwards and we're like, oh, well, because I'm a libertarian first and a member of the Church of Jesus Christ second, then that means that Satan must be an authoritarian, because that's how libertarians tell me what evil means. That's what I learned listening to the Daily Grifter or whatever, right? And when we have this just backwards understanding of evil, even Christ's actions don't seem 100% virtuous, which should be a red flag. But I mean, most people don't even read the scriptures, I guess, or maybe they read the words on the page, but they don't make any attempt to make sure that they're understanding them. That's the real problem with this misunderstanding of the quote-unquote plan that Satan proposed, is that it equates God's goodness with a tolerance for evil. God's plan is good because it allows us to sin. And that's not why God's plan is good. God's plan is good because it works. It's a real plan and it's not a lie, and it's founded in this reality. And sure, maybe it's horrible that God is king of the universe and the way that heaven is structured is like this caste system of glory, and that's kind of offensive to, our modern sensibilities, but that's the way that it is, and that's the way that it has to be. The Book of Mormon tells us that if he didn't do that, that he would fall from glory. And I just don't see why people can't see this. It's so obvious. I can deeply relate to Mormon, the narrator of the Book of Mormon. He saw our day, right? And he's just trying so hard to get us to recognize what true liberty is. And he tells us all these stories about Captain Moroni. He had the title of liberty. He's literally the icon of liberty in the Book of Mormon is Captain Moroni. Like, he embodies it. The patron saint of liberty is Captain Moroni, right? And with this idea of authoritarianism, or like this forcing people to be righteous as being evil, like Captain Moroni looks like a total war criminal thug, because he executed all these disloyal Nephites in the middle of a war without any trial. But Mormon's like, look guys, Captain Moroni is awesome. Look, I named my son after him. Look, I'm praising him with the special verbiage that I only use for one other person. Guess who it is? And he's just awesome. Moroni is the most awesome person. And this just goes whoosh. It goes right over our heads. And this is because Mormon's trying to get us to like shake off this modern misunderstanding, this paradigm of good and evil and what true freedom is. He's trying to get us to understand it better. Yeah, here's a lighthearted example, I guess, that will make it more clear. But we've got a big problem in American forests these days that has to deal with at any moment, there could be a giant forest fire that totally destroys it, and it's 100% self-inflicted. It's because we bought into the lies of this bear who came around and said, oh, we can prevent all the forest fires. The consequences of listening to this bear guy is that every forest now is just totally clogged with all these trees that just thrive in the shadows, right? And like the Douglas firs, they're up there and they're clogging it all up. And it's just turned into a giant tinderbox that will just explode and destroy the entire forest at any moment. And now we got to rehabilitate all the forests in America. Otherwise, like the whole country is just going to turn into a pile of ashes, right? And that's the consequence when we like buy into these noble lies that Satan and his priests, I guess, peddle upon us. And that's really, Satan's this whiny guy. He wants to be perceived as the best, the most charitable, and that's how he designs his things. He wants, oh, the United Order? Well, guess what? I've got communism. It's even more equal. Oh, true marriage, the true everlasting covenant of marriage. Well, that's just oppressive. I've got free love. The kingdom of God, the laws of God, and the laws of heaven. Well, let me give you this libertarianism. It's actually very principled and rational, and it makes way more sense, I promise you. And even capitalism is just like another system that's more fair than like God's system. Anyway, the true definition of freedom has been totally corrupted, and if you talk to anyone from like a few hundred years ago, they wouldn't know what we're talking about when we talk about freedom, because today freedom has become synonymous with your ability to pursue sin, to pursue your impulses, and it's become so muddied that your ability to pursue your vices is now an intrinsic part of your identity. Right? Makes sense? The prophets have warned us about this twisting of the freedom. They've mentioned it in conference before. And so that's really that's what life's all about, right? We got to maximize our ability to make good choices. And we have a responsibility to maximize the ability of those around us to make good choices as well. Whereas if we choose the other path, the path of following Satan looks kind of free. It looks kind of nice, but ultimately it's captivity. So the Book of Mormon tells us about these two paths, but it doesn't emphasize enough that the Satan's path looks kind of nice, right? Paul understood this as well. He said, you can be a slave to Satan or you can be a slave to Christ. The whole no man can serve two masters, and the Book of Mormon is the same. I don't understand why people think that you can pursue your carnal impulses and not become a slave to them. And ultimately, the people who control your access to drugs or pornography or whatever, ultimately they have power over you, okay? Those are your masters. And this is what really, really gets me going, is that these decisions don't just affect you individually, they affect the whole community at large. Like, for instance, let's talk about like the mafia. Like, if the mafia is controlling the gambling and the alcohol and drugs and pornography, like they're dealing in all of these sins, right? They're merchants of vice, right? When someone in the community goes to them and buys their services, it's siphoning off energy from the community and it's giving it into the hands of these gangsters. And that's what's happening. And that's the history of America, really. All of this power being concentrated by these bad people. And Mormon, when he tells us the story of the Book of Mormon, it's the same thing. That's what he's saying. He's saying the wickedness of the people is causing these secret combinations to be built up. And we see that today. These people who have built their wealth through sin now have enough power to legalize all their streams of income. They can lobby the government, and they have more influence in the elections than God-fearing Americans. And because of that, America feels like it's hostile to the good Christian people that built the country, and it doesn't make sense anymore. It's really frustrating. And then you go to church and you talk to the members of your faith, right? And they're like, well, but we can't force people to be righteous. Have you read the Book of Mormon? Let's be real here. That is how things worked in Nephite society. It was founded on true freedom. People were not put to death if they didn't believe in God, but they were not allowed to break the commandments. They weren't allowed to prostitute people or commit adultery, worship false gods. They strove for a Christ-centered culture. We don't need to persecute people if they have a different understanding of Christ, but we have a mandate to protect our communities from sin and teach the truth. And the Book of Mormon, it teaches that governmental power is a legitimate method to protect the gospel, to protect the truth and the scriptures. They use it all the time. Like, just read the book and what it says, and this is obvious. Somehow people, they use libertarianism to interpret the gospel, so they can't see it. And libertarianism was not written by awesome prophet general warriors. Libertarianism was created by generational atheists and generational antichrists. All of it is founded on this so-called non-aggression principle, which is just, It's just like a very childish mental exercise to create morality without having to say the word Jesus. And it's ridiculous. I don't understand why anyone who believes in God like would take this seriously at all. Like there's these Christian libertarians, like what is that exactly? Either you're an individualist and you're not your brother's keeper, or you're going to take care of those around you and protect them from evil. Those are the choices. And if you get into these internet communities where people are trying to pursue libertarianism to its logical conclusions, they come up with anarcho-capitalism, which is this fantastic, impossible society where there's no rules and the only rule is money. If that doesn't sound like Satan, then I don't know what to tell you, but that's his rule. Money. He doesn't care about hierarchy, boundaries, rules, any of that. He's the money guy. That's him. Rant over. We all came to Earth because we opposed this plan, and the distortions on freedom are they're just trying to convince you that it's wrong to stand as a witness against evil and testify of the truth. You swore loyalty to God in the pre-existence. That's why you're allowed to live here. Don't back down. Don't walk it back. Like, we're here to diminish the power of evil on earth and protect our brethren, redeem our brethren. That's the point of it all. Don't listen to these guys, okay? And if you hear someone talking like this, oh, there's a authoritarian, Satan was going to force us to be righteous. Now you know how to shut him down, okay? We got to stop it, okay? That's it. All right. We're done.